Alaska's frozen ground may be about to make history once again. After months of continuous drilling, digging through thousands of tons of pay dirt, and testing hundreds of samples, Parker Schnabel's team has found gold signals that have caught the attention of the entire mining industry. According to the early reports, several drill holes in the area being tested have recorded gold values far better than expected. If the upcoming testing confirms these same results, this could become one of the biggest gold zones Parker has ever discovered. Over the past several seasons of Gold Rush, Parker has mined millions of dollars worth of gold and built large mining operations with investments worth tens of millions of dollars. But this time, the discussion is not just about another successful season. It's about a discovery that could become the biggest turning point of his entire mining career. Even experienced geologists are reviewing the new data again and again because the early signs suggest a much richer deposit than a typical placer gold area. But what exactly did those drilling reports reveal that got Parker's entire team so excited? Could this part of Alaska really become the biggest gold discovery of his career? Or is this story about to take another unexpected turn? Watch the video until the end to find out. And if you enjoy Gold Rush, hidden treasures, and high-drama documentary stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon, because the discoveries coming next could become the biggest story of Parker Schnabel's entire career. Parker Schnabel's new story in Alaska was nothing short of a major breakthrough. After spending several months surveying different locations, his team finally focused on an area that many mining companies had never considered very important. After carefully reviewing old geological records, satellite maps, and the structure of the land again and again, Parker believed there could be something beneath this ground that no one had fully understood before. It wasn't just a guess. It was a decision based on months of research and years of experience. The team then began the first round of surveys in the area. Test drilling started at multiple locations, and one drill hole after another was completed. Every new sample was immediately sent to the lab while the geologists continued analyzing the data. At first, no one expected anything extraordinary, but as soon as the first few results came back, the entire atmosphere changed. Several drill holes showed gold values higher than expected. Some samples showed such strong recovery that the team decided to test them again to make sure there was no room for error. When the second round of testing produced almost the same results, everyone at the camp realized this was not an ordinary situation. Even the experienced engineers and geologists started looking at one another. Many people who had spent years in mining admitted that such strong early signs were not something you see every day. Although it was still too early to say how much gold was actually there, one thing had become clear. A promising gold zone could be lying beneath the ground, and its full potential was still waiting to be revealed. Parker Schnabel quietly held the report in his hands for a few moments. He didn't celebrate a big victory because he knew the real test was still ahead. He simply told his team, if the next round of drilling tells the same story, we may be standing in front of the biggest opportunity of our entire career. From that moment on, the whole team worked even harder because everyone had begun to feel that this quiet piece of Alaska could be about to write one of the biggest stories in Gold Rush history. Why Parker chose this location. Parker Schnabel had several new land options in Alaska. Some areas had already produced good amounts of gold, while others had been worked by different mining companies in the past. But instead of choosing the easier path, Parker decided to take a chance on an area that most people considered far too risky. On the surface, the ground looked completely ordinary, but Parker wasn't focused on the surface. His attention was on the old geological records that had been created years earlier and were now mostly forgotten. For several weeks, he carefully studied old survey maps, drilling records, and geological reports from the area. During that process, he came across something interesting. Years ago, some experts had suggested that an ancient river channel once flowed beneath this land. Old river channels can often trap large amounts of gold, but over time they become buried beneath thick layers of soil and rock. Reaching those deep layers is extremely difficult and expensive, which is why most mining companies avoid places like this. That was the main reason so many people had looked at this land before but eventually walked away. They believed the cost of mining here would never be worth the return. But Parker saw it differently. He believed that if a place is difficult to reach, it might also be the most valuable. He didn't rely only on old records. His team carried out new surveys, fresh sampling, and early testing to verify every important detail again, making sure the final decision was based on solid data rather than simple assumptions. After months of research, Parker finally made the decision that his team called the biggest risk of the season. Heavy equipment was brought in, a new drilling plan was prepared, and millions of dollars were committed to this single project. Parker knew that if his prediction was wrong, it could become the biggest financial loss of the season. But if he was right, this ground could mark the beginning of the biggest gold discovery in gold rush history. At that time, no one imagined that this high-risk decision would eventually draw the attention of the entire mining industry to this remote part of Alaska. The massive drilling operation. The land had been chosen. Now it was time to prove that the decision was the right one. Within a few days, Parker Schnabel's entire team arrived at the remote Alaskan location, where the weather could change every hour. Giant excavators, bulldozers, drilling rigs, and dozens of heavy machines were put to work. The whole camp had one goal: to reach whatever was hidden beneath the ground as quickly as possible. The work didn't stop at sunset. It continued 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As soon as one shift ended, the next one took over. The sound of heavy machinery echoed across the area day and night. But the real challenge wasn't finding gold. It was removing the thick layer covering it. Thousands of tons of soil, gravel, and rock had to be cleared away little by little. In many places, the machine struggled against extremely hard rock. Sometimes heavy rain stopped the work, while freezing winds slowed the equipment. Even then, the team refused to back down. Parker knew that only after getting through the upper layers would the real story begin. After that, deep test hole drilling began. One deep drill hole after another was completed, and the core samples from each hole were carefully packed and sent for testing. Engineers and geologists examined every sample in detail. The color of the soil, the texture of the gravel, the rock layers, and even the smallest mineral signs were carefully recorded. Before making any decision, the data was checked and compared several times to make sure nothing had been missed. Then came the moment that changed the atmosphere across the entire camp. Several core samples started showing signs that looked much stronger than a normal gold zone. Even after being tested again, the results remained almost the same. The geologists believed the team might have reached the edge of a major gold zone. Parker looked at the report, stayed silent for a few moments, and then told his team, "Don't celebrate yet. But if the next few drill holes tell the same story, we may be very close to the discovery we've been waiting for all these years." From that moment on, the entire operation moved even faster because everyone had started to feel that something truly extraordinary could be waiting beneath the ground. The moment they hit the richest pay dirt, after weeks of continuous drilling and excavation, the day the entire team had been waiting for finally arrived. During the first shift that morning, an excavator reached a layer of ground that looked completely different from the ones above it. The color of the soil had changed, the gravel felt much heavier, and the experienced operators immediately realized they might have reached the rich pay layer they had been searching for over the past several months. As soon as Parker received the news, he headed straight to the excavation site without wasting a single moment. A short time later, the new pay dirt was sent to the wash plant. The entire team had their eyes on the first cleanup. The machine started, water rushed through the system, and the processing slowly moved forward. No one wanted to make any predictions. Everyone was simply waiting for the results. But as soon as the first cleanup was completed, the atmosphere inside the gold room changed instantly. Bright yellow gold particles were clearly visible in the gold tray. The initial recovery was much better than expected. Someone quietly said, "Getting a result this good in the very first cleanup doesn't happen often." The second and third cleanups followed, and each time the gold recovery looked even stronger than before. The engineers immediately compared the production data with the records from the previous weeks. The reports clearly showed that this was not just a normal improvement. The new pay layer was consistently producing high grades. The geologists believed that if this pattern continued, it could become the richest gold zone of the entire season. Although it was still too early to estimate the total amount of gold, one thing had become clear. The team had reached something truly exceptional. Several crew members in the gold room stood silently for a few moments, simply looking at the shining gold in the tray. Months of hard work, freezing nights, harsh weather, and constant risk suddenly felt worth it. Parker Schnabel carefully looked at the gold, then turned to his team with a smile and said, "This is why we never give up." A wave of excitement spread across the entire camp, but Parker quickly reminded everyone that the real work was still ahead. If the same high grades continued over the next several days, this Alaska discovery could become more than just a successful mine. It could become one of the biggest gold discoveries in gold rush history. Experts couldn't believe the results. After the first series of successful cleanups, the biggest question was whether this was simply good luck or whether an extraordinary gold zone really existed beneath the ground. Parker Schnabel didn't want to make any decision based only on what he could see. He immediately sent the core samples and gold samples for independent lab testing. His message was clear. If this discovery was truly significant, every report had to be carefully tested and verified. A few days later, the first lab report arrived. The gold purity and the amount of gold found in the samples gave the entire team even more confidence. More samples were tested, and they produced almost the same results. Although it was still too early to make a final estimate, the early reports clearly suggested that this was not an ordinary gold zone. The geologists once again analyzed the drilling data, soil layers, and core samples together. Many experts believed the team had reached an area whose full potential had not yet been revealed. After that, the data verification process began. Every report was checked again, every sample was retested, and every possible mistake was almost completely ruled out. As more reports came in, news of the discovery spread quickly through the mining industry. Experienced mining experts also wanted to know what Parker's team had found in this part of Alaska that had produced such strong early results. Within just a few days, Parker Schnabel's name was once again the biggest topic in Alaska's mining community. Everyone was waiting for the next round of drilling and the next set of reports. Because if the upcoming samples continued telling the same story, this discovery could become not only the biggest of Parker's career, but also one of the greatest gold discoveries in gold rush history. The biggest gold recovery of Parker's career. Everything that had happened so far had boosted the team's confidence, but the biggest surprise was still ahead. As more and more new pay dirt reached the wash plant, the gold recovery continued improving with every cleanup. What had first seemed like hope was now showing up consistently in the production data. Every day, more gold was being collected in the gold room, and the team began to realize they might be heading toward the biggest gold recovery season of Parker Schnabel's entire career. During this time, the heavy equipment was running at full capacity. Excavators, loaders, wash plants, and conveyors operated almost without stopping. Day or night, the pace of the operation never slowed down. Different crew shifts worked continuously so that not even a single hour was lost. After every new cleanup, a production report was prepared, and almost every report turned out better than the previous one. The atmosphere across the entire camp had completely changed. The biggest change could be seen in the team's confidence. At the beginning, everyone was simply hoping for good results. But now, every crew member had started believing they were part of something far bigger than an ordinary season. Even the engineers and geologists believed the gold zone they were mining could be much richer than expected. Although the final numbers for the season were still not available, the early performance had already created the possibility that this could become the most successful season of Parker Schnabel's career. Slowly, news of the operation spread across Alaska. Other miners and people in the industry also started watching the production reports closely. If the same pace continued until the end of the season, Parker could challenge not only his own records, but also several long-standing gold rush records. This was no longer just another successful mining project. It was becoming the story of a discovery that could secure Parker Schnabel's place among the most successful miners in gold rush history. How this discovery changes gold rush forever. As Parker Schnabel's operation continued producing stronger results, the entire gold rush community began talking about one question. Was this simply a successful season, or was it a turning point that could change the way mining is done for years to come? Many experienced miners across Alaska kept a close eye on the operation. Everyone wanted to know what Parker was doing differently that others had not been able to do. For years, Tony Beets has been considered one of the most experienced and successful miners in gold rush. On the other hand, Rick Ness is known for making bold decisions and working through difficult conditions. But this time, the conversation wasn't about one good cleanup. It was about Parker's new approach, from choosing the ground to drilling, data analysis, and production planning. Many people believed he had not only worked harder, but had also worked smarter than before. Gradually, the competition across the mining industry also started to change. It was no longer enough to simply use more machines or hire more workers. Parker's operation showed that the right geological research, continuous data analysis, and making the right big decision at the right time could completely change the direction of a mining project. Many mining companies also began rechecking old records in deeper gold zones because they started believing that the biggest discoveries of the future might be hidden in places that had once been overlooked. That is why many experts started seeing Parker's success as more than just a major discovery. They believed it could become a new standard for Gold Rush. Although the final results and the complete season numbers were still pending, one thing had become clear. This operation had already begun influencing future mining strategies. If the upcoming drilling and production remained just as strong, Parker Schnabel's season could be remembered not only as a record-breaking year, but as the moment modern placer mining took a new direction. Millions of dollars still underground. When the early drilling results and the consistently strong performance were analyzed, another interesting question emerged for Parker Schnabel's team. Was the gold zone they had reached the whole story? Or was it only the beginning? The engineers and geologists combined all the drill holes, core samples, and production data to create new geological models. Those models revealed several deeper areas that had not yet been drilled, but their underground structure looked very similar to the gold zone that had already been discovered. Because of these findings, the team identified several deep gold targets. These were areas located much deeper than the current excavation or extending around it. Reaching them would require deeper drilling, more time, and a much larger investment. So far, these sections had not been fully explored, which meant no one could honestly say how much gold might be there. However, the early geological data clearly suggested that these untested areas could not be ignored. Many experts believe that if this gold system continued deeper underground, future drilling could lead to even more important discoveries. However, this was only a possibility, not a confirmed fact. In the mining industry, geological models sometimes prove to be accurate, while in other cases they change completely as more data becomes available. That is why Parker's team wanted to move forward carefully instead of making big claims without solid evidence. For that reason, preparations for the next season had already begun. New drill targets were selected, additional surveys were planned, and data collection started in the deeper areas where the machines had not yet reached. If the next round of drilling confirms these early signs, there is a possibility that millions of dollars worth of additional gold could still be hidden underground. But for now, this remains only an estimate based on geological models and early analysis, and it can only be confirmed through future exploration. The final count that shocked everyone. After nearly 6 months of non-stop mining, the day Parker Schnabel and his entire team had been waiting for finally arrived. The sound of heavy machinery was replaced by everyone's attention on the final gold weigh-in. The team was preparing the final count of all the gold recovered from the season's cleanups. Production reports, gold recovery data, and processing records were carefully compared one by one to make sure there were no mistakes. Every new number showed the same thing. This had become one of the most successful seasons of Parker's career. When the final season summary was completed, everyone at the camp fell silent for a few moments. Months of hard work, harsh weather, non-stop 24/7 operations, and processing thousands of tons of pay dirt had produced a result that very few people could have imagined at the beginning of the season. Although the final value and total production still depended on market prices and official calculations, one thing was clear: this season had performed far better than Parker had expected. A short time later, excitement spread across the entire camp. Crew members congratulated one another because everyone knew they had done more than just finish a successful season. They had become part of one of the most memorable stories in Gold Rush history. At the same time, the investors who had backed the project were also extremely excited. The strong production results gave them even greater confidence that the large-scale planning, research, and investment had been the right decision. Before long, news of this historic season spread throughout the mining industry. Trade magazines, mining analysts, and people connected with Gold Rush all started talking about Parker Schnabel's achievement. Many experts believed the operation had set a new example for modern placer mining. Parker continued giving credit to his entire team for the success, but everyone knew this had become the biggest turning point of his career. Parker's biggest moment ever. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains of Alaska. The mine, which had echoed with the sound of heavy machinery all day, had finally become quiet. Parker Schnabel stood alone, looking at the massive pit where, just a few months earlier, there had been nothing but rock, dirt, and uncertainty. Now that same place had become the witness to one of the most unforgettable seasons of his life. This wasn't just about finding gold, it was the reward for years of hard work and dedication he had put into this dream since childhood. At a moment like this, Parker couldn't help but remember his grandpa, John Schnabel. He was the one who taught Parker as a child that mining is not just about strength, it's about patience, knowledge, and making the right decisions. When others choose the easy path, a real miner is the one who believes in the difficult ground. That lesson may have been what gave Parker the strength to keep moving forward through every challenge. There were difficult seasons. There were times when hopes were crushed, but he never gave up. This success wasn't Parker's alone. Dozens of machine operators, engineers, geologists, and crew members had worked day and night for months. Some spent freezing nights repairing machines, some monitored the drilling around the clock, and others carefully examined every single sample. This victory belonged to the entire team, who faced every challenge together. Working in the harsh conditions of Alaska was never easy, but in the end, their hard work paid off. Parker's focus was no longer only on this season. His mind was already planning for the next one. Many deep targets still needed to be explored, new surveys had to be completed, and there were several areas where the machines had not even reached yet. Parker knew this wasn't the end. It was probably a new beginning. He looked at the mine one more time, smiled quietly, and walked away, because his next goal was even bigger than before. The sun had completely set. In the cold Alaskan air, the massive mine sat in an unusual silence. The machines that had worked non-stop for months had finally stopped, but one question still remained. Had Parker Schnabel's biggest discovery ended here, or was the real story just beginning? The drilling reports, core samples, and production data collected throughout the season had clearly shown that this area contained a much richer gold zone than expected. But several geological models were still suggesting that there could be additional sections beneath and around the current excavation where no machine had reached yet. That is why Parker and his team had already started preparing for the next season. New drill targets were being selected, additional surveys were being planned, and a list of deep gold targets was being prepared, areas that could not be fully explored this season because of time limits. No one claimed that those areas definitely contained massive amounts of gold, but the early signs were strong enough that they could not be ignored. Now the entire mining industry was watching Parker's next move because everyone wanted to see what the next round of drilling would reveal. If the upcoming surveys and deeper drilling confirmed these early signs, this discovery could become the biggest achievement of Parker Schnabel's entire career. And if the geological models proved to be correct, a new chapter could be added to the story of Gold Rush, one that will be remembered for years to come. But for now, it remains a possibility that can only be confirmed through future exploration. If the early signs are confirmed by future drilling, this Alaska discovery could become the biggest gold discovery of Parker Schnabel's entire career. And if this gold zone extends deeper as the geological models suggest, the biggest chapter in Gold Rush history may only be just beginning. If you enjoy high-drama, research-based documentaries in the style of Discovery Channel, make sure to subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon, and stay with us. Because Parker Schnabel's next move could reveal the secret the entire mining world has been waiting for.